Hello, everybody, and welcome to Athletic Definition. My name is Coach Ray Z. Today, my guest is Sean Viramontez. Welcome to Fireside. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good, Ray. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So, me and Sean, we've known each other for quite some time, and uh, but regardless, I always like to start off from the beginning. But I'll let you know a little bit of what he's done as a teaser. Basically, you just came off completing your 20th consecutive Los Angeles Marathon, which is
Yes,
very
sir.
impressive. And I know you've completed an Ironman, probably a few of them. Have you done more than one?
You know what? Yes, the Ironman races I've participated in a few, one being a half and one being a full, and several triathlons from sprint distances to Olympic. Yeah, it's been a great journey.
Okay, cool. So I always like to get started from the very beginning. When you were a kid, were you very active? Did you play sports, or was that even like a big thing in your family?
You know, it always has been, and thanks for asking that question. It's been great. It's my father's been a big advocate of sports. Baseball being his number one sport, and always being a huge Dodger fan over the years because of my dad, and watching USC football and just sports in general has always been something that him and I connected on, and just grew a passion for it from my dad.
And then growing up, did you like to play sports, or were you just more watching it?
You know what? I love watching it, but I loved even more playing it. It kind of started when we were young. We lived in a little cul-de-sac in Azusa, and we used to play, football. We used to put the bases outside and play with all the local neighbors, and baseball and football, and have like our little lines drawn on the street with chalk and where the touchdown was at. So yeah, always played. And from that point on, in middle school playing, some flag football, and afterwards even participating in some baseball. But the hockey bug actually bit California, and roller hockey was huge. And I played from my sophomore year all the way to in adult, playing roller hockey in the circuit for many, many, many years, and grew a love for playing hockey as well.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that. Um, Not too much hockey rings around where we grew up. I also grew up
It's
in Azusa.
rollerblade. Yeah, rollerblade versus ice.
Yeah, and then I remember. So we all grew up in Azusa. A few of the
Yep.
people I'm going to talk about, people
Yeah.
are like, "What's Azusa?" It's a small city, San Gabriel Valley
Not in
in
China.
California. Uh, and Tony Robbins is from Azusa, so that's probably someone you've heard about.
Oh yeah.
And I was at one of Steven's party, who I hope to have him on in the future. He's also an Ironman.
Yeah.
Um, and you guys were like talking about running LA Marathon. You and I can't remember who else. And I don't at the time, from what I learned, is you guys didn't know how to train or anything, but you
No,
guys
no.
were like the first people that I heard. Oh, they're actually going to participate and do it.
Yeah, we were green behind the ears, man. I gotta tell you, it was a little weightlifting involved. We were weightlifting, and Steve and I would go to the gym, and there was a free gym out in Citrus College. It was a circuit training gym, and him and I would participate in that, and we were just bulking up. It was really nothing more than trying to get a little bit of mass and bench press. And Steve one day turned to me and he's like, you know what, we should run the LA Marathon. My brother-in-law ran it and did like an 8 hour and 30-minute run, but he finished. He's like, I think we can do better than that. So it was kind of motivation there, and trying to lean out some of that mass. We're like, hey, let's do it. So we started to run at the local high school. We went to Gladstone High School, and we started running there. And I think the most miles we actually did was probably maybe 8 miles at the most before we took on the marathon. So it was kind of funny. We actually wore slip-on track shoes. Nike had one before the Vibrams were made, and we made the biggest mistake at least then. And lo and behold, the Vibrams became the whole running barefoot mentality became the whole fad. And I told Steve we missed an opportunity there. But yeah, we were totally unprepared, green behind the ears, but the mentality was, you know what, we could probably lean out a little bit. And so that's kind of how it all began. Steve and I just saying, let's do it. And kudos to him for saying, let's just try it out. And we both put the effort forward and did it.
Okay, that's interesting. So it was him who planted the idea. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
it was Steve. Yeah, Steve was the one. He is the guy that said let's get it going, man. And he used his brother in law as kind of a push to say if he did it, come on, we can do it. And so we said, heck yeah, let's go for it.
and I'm sure you've learned how to train properly from now to completing 20 consecutive Los Angeles marathons. So how was the first one with not no proper training and just kind of running it basically?
You know, it was exciting at the same time. It was difficult. You know, as you would know, Ray, from your experience, it was. You know, getting into it, being with Steve, as you know him personally, is kind of like always a positive soul. You know, never a negative day. You know, we all have them, but it's always smiling type of guy. So that helped out, and I was kind of the same way. So getting into it, we just said, you know what, push through it. Don't know when the wall's going to hit, but when the wall hit, man, it bit. I was like, I think it hit a little early for us at least. It was like mile 15. We started to be like, wow, you know, training for 8 miles wasn't the best bet. Definitely tough, but you know, we end up coming across the finish line. It wasn't about time so much. It was about finishing and enjoying the energy from the crowd, and everything was, you know, all new to us. So it was so awesome. But coming in at 5 hours and 22 minutes, we were like, hey, that was pretty good. We smashed your brother-in-law's 8:30. So we were happy to do that, you know. And the marathon, we just bit the marathon after that. The bug bit us.
So how soon after that did you sign up for another marathon? Because I know after I did my first one, I was like, that's it, I'm one and done. I was hurting. I didn't even want to do another one. It took me a little while to turn my ways.
Yeah, you know, it was funny for me personally, Ray. It was, I hate to say love at first sight, but after that, I registered right away for the next one. Because even prior to that, you know, I think it was the next one was Long Beach right after that, and then we transitioned over to the, you know, the next LA Marathon, because 2002 is when it started, and then 2003 was the next one. So yeah, it was I registered right away. I think it was Steve, and he, I don't want to quote him on this, but I think he was more hesitant to like let's go again. It was painful, but yeah, I think he did it right after that too, and he laid off a while after that because of some life stuff that came up. But overall, yeah, the marathon bug bit me, and like I said, 20 consecutive since then, never stopped.
And so besides LA 20 consecutive, you've done Long Beach. How many marathons do you have total?
You know, total, it's I think it's last check on Athlinks. I try to push always over to Athlinks. I think it's like 47 or 48, right around there. There's
Wow.
Yeah, I've ran outside of the state pretty often. I've done San Antonio a few times. I've also participated in many the Rock and Roll series, where, you know, going to Arizona, running those marathons several times. Also, it's part of the Ironman course that I did in Arizona Ironman. So, yeah, you know, very fortunate and blessed by the company. My company's taken um, a part in that sponsorship of me. I was very fortunate that the owners liked what I was doing. And my owner, Mike, actually, at 63 years old, decided, you know what? I want to lose some pounds. Can you help train me? So I helped actually train him, and he started to participate in race walking and also with marathons at 62. And even to this day, at 83 years old, he's still doing 5Ks and 10Ks. And he's an inspiration. But I did create an animal there. So very, very fortunate. My boss during those years would travel around the different states, and I would run marathons. He would do a half, I would do a full. So yeah, very fortunate. My goal is to get beyond 50, even do maybe 100 before I go, you know?
Well, wow. You have quite a few marathons, more than I thought. I thought you were maybe like in the 20 something, but that's very
Yeah.
impressive. And
Yeah.
then how did marathoning transition over to the Ironman? Like how many years after did you start doing Ironman?
You know, Ironman was 2008, but triathlons prior to that were local in Bonelli Park in San Dimas. So I would do several sprint distances, Olympic distances. So a lot of those higher, you know, higher lactate threshold type of races where you're just pushing the envelope, and that kind of geared me up to getting towards the Ironman level. But again, kudos to Steve. We're running, and he says, "Why don't you buy a bike?" And I'm like, nah, I don't want to buy it. I don't want to be a cyclist. I kind of like to keep a little bit of muscle mass. I didn't want to be like a Lance Armstrong where it's just all lower leg mass and then super skinny on top. And I'm like, and then so kind of just didn't even really take that into consideration. And Steve came back to me like about 2 months later. He's like, dude, you should buy a triathlon bike. That way you can still run and you can swim. So swimming wasn't my cup of tea. I would never consider myself a swimmer. Even though I knew how to swim, I was like, nah, it's just a little bit too much to do an Ironman. It's 2.4 miles of swimming. And so, lo and behold, I linked up with a local shop that's no longer here in Laverne. It was called Foothill Cyclery. Steve had a good friend there, Ron. And next thing you know, I got hooked up with the bike and started training with those guys in Laverne. And we'd ride all over by Benelli Park and got involved in that. And then from that, over the years, it picked up. And then I finally committed to signing up for an Ironman. And I did the first one. It was 2008, the Arizona Ironman, a year after the inaugural event on '07, which was considered one of the harder ones because I was actually in the month of April, which was Kona. They called it Kona-like conditions, way too hot and windy, so they moved it to November. So yeah, I still have all my pride in that and I love it today. Don't do it as much anymore, but still love the aspect of triathlon.
And I know it's because you're a family man, married now, have kids,
Yes.
and twins, I believe.
Yes, two twin daughters, almost 3.5 years old. They keep the marathon legs turning. Tell you that much.
Yeah, I was gonna say like now, like as you prepared for this marathon and having twins, how is that different from when you were just kind of more free to do about what you needed to do?
It's a great question because it takes a lot of commitment. As you know, these races don't come with its challenges, and having a very supportive wife and family is amazing. My mom and dad to this day, matter of fact, still driving me to Dodger Stadium. They drove me this last marathon to the start line, and usually would commit to going there at the end, but because of COVID and their little health elements being older, they didn't go to the finish line this year. They're going to commit to going next year. But yeah, that family effort is huge, and my wife, being very supportive. I've been married to her for 6 years, but with her together for 15. And, any event, she's never hesitated to say, you know what, go ahead and do it. And, knowing that every March coming up, she would always be the attitude and the mentality and the support. And having the girls, there was always that question of Mark, how's it going to be different, And I always get razzed at work from the guys that had kids, gained 50 pounds. Oh man, just wait after you're going to have two kids. Oh my God, you're never going to do running again. And that was a challenge. I've heard Shaquille O'Neal say it and many others that have inspired me in business. You know what? Don't make that as an excuse. You're your own CEO. You're your own person to push to that finish line. Don't let anybody bring you down and say you can't do it. When someone told that person no, those are the people we know today, the Shark Tank type of mentality people that make the extra money that get to the finish line. So when they said that, it inspired me. And to this day, I see them at the finish line every year. Matter of fact, on mile 18 this year, they were there, smiling, ran up to dad, took some pictures. And as a matter of fact, the last two marathons prior, I pushed them in their stroller the last mile because you can't go to the finish line because of the bombing that happened in Boston. Those regulations have changed. But yeah, that's been actually inspiring, even more so to continue it. And for all the naysayers to kind of just push it in their face at work, like, hey, I still get the medals, man. What's your excuse?
Well, I remember back in the day you telling me I want to hit 20 consecutive LA marathons, and now you've accomplished that goal. So and I think you answered it, but you do want to continue. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I had this hat on, LA Loyal, and they give the hats out when you're consistent. They have different tiers now. It's like 5, 10, and 15. And I got my medal a few years back when they first announced the LA Loyal program. And I told my wife about mile 18. Sorry, mile 18, year 18 in a row. I said, you know what? Maybe at 20, I'll just kind of like I won't be so critical of having to run the next one. But now that I've accomplished the 20th, it's like, why not do 30? Why not make consecutive? And I was very fortunate to know one of the legacy runners personally that's done every LA marathon since 84 and
Uh oh.
and since 84. And His name was Rich Ringwald, and he stopped running them. He's a Vietnam vet. Happy Veterans Day to him from yesterday. And talking to him a few times, he had to stop eventually because his wife had some health ailments. That's true love. He put his wife ahead of the marathon, which is important. Family first. I get that. But knowing him as a legacy runner and just kind of hearing those stories and seeing all those guys that you see that say legacy Jim, or you've seen that in the course, and I just can't stop but like yell at them and say, "Come on, man, good job, 36 in a row," and then that just inspires me to keep moving forward to the next one. God willing, 21, 22. If I can keep doing it, I'll just keep doing it till I actually has to have an event where I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I always cheer for the legacies. Good job, Legacy Rick or whoever, and I clap for them. And I've seen some of their stories, and I mean, I've done it 15 years in a row. You've done it 20, and those guys 36. And along the way, they did a story on them. They're talking about people die, people get married, people
Yeah.
are born. One of them, I think, has HIV and is still running it. So it's like it takes a lot to keep that streak going. So even just to do it once, but then to keep going and doing it, it's a lot of sacrifice because you mentioned you have to have a good family support system that is like, especially once you're married and all that.
Yeah, you're married and kids, and there's take those responsibilities, and you got to have that spouse that's supportive, and it works both ways. But at the same time, it's not like you and I started out saying, "Oh, I'm going to run a marathon. I can't wait to do 15 in a row, right, or 20 in a row." It was just a unforeseen territory, and having that experience after one or two or three, it just became like my baby. It was like that's something very important to me. And I think when you express that to whoever you're with, whether it's your wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, it's important for that individual to know that. And I think that's true love, right? Beyond the bells and whistles of wedding rings and all that, true love is the small things. And knowing that my wife supports me in that is amazing. And if I can push that back into my daughters, whether they run or not, I want them to see that dad has done something and stay consistent with it. Whether it's running, music, art, whatever it is, just be consistent. Go out there and do it, and get your foot on the start line. And if you set yourself out to do it, go out there and do it and get to the finish line. And I've talked to many runners that DNF'd, and as you know, that's did not finish, whether it was an Ironman or whether it was in the marathon. And I said, look, just because you had a DNF, you put your foot in front of that finish line when most people were in bed. You set out to do a goal, and you're going to get back up and you're going to do it next year. So, kudos to all those that start out and do it. Whether you do 20, 15 like yourself, it's important that you set a goal out to do something.
And out of the 20 marathons that you've done in LA so far, like what's your best highlight or highlights or any special memories out of the 20 that really
Yeah,
stand out to you?
there's a lot of them, but to narrow it down to maybe five, I would say, um, just seeing my kids at the finish line for the first time, being a parent that had kids later in his life. I was tearing up, like, about mile 18, 19, just knowing that I'm going to see them there. I wanted kids all my life and didn't have them until later. And they're going to be in a special event that I hold huge to my heart. And they're going to be there at the end. How awesome is that? And then there was my wife, because I'd already seen my wife at several marathons, and that was important. But together, I was like, that was just a lot to take in. So to see them there and do that, that was one that sticks out as the top. But others that come to mind are, hitting a 319. Didn't qualify for Boston that year because I always consider LA Marathon not being the fastest course. It's definitely challenging. Uh, there's different benefits to that course, but there's a lot of other marathons that are out there that are easier to BQ, and so getting a 319 was a nice to set that in my pace. And then I have a buddy that's ran and paced with me a lot, Thomas Zaid, and participating in those, training together with him, and inspiring him in the beginning, knowing what he's done athletically. Maybe you'll have him on the show one of these days. Uh,
Trying to, I plan to. Yeah, Thomas is another guy besides Steven that we grew up
yeah,
with, and he's turned out to do a Badwater, so he's
yeah,
just a badass.
ultra marathoner, badass. Very inspirational athlete. Very fortunate that him and I have a very similar pace, so we're able to train together. Even though he's done a 3:04 marathon, and I've done a 3:08 to qualify for Boston. It's that camaraderie with a friend running together at that pace to qualify. I mean, like 650, 650, 651 each mile, and seeing that on your splits to get there, and then finally tapering off 710, 710, 710 to hit that pace and to be there with them. That stands out in the LA Marathon. And then two, my dad's a veteran too, and it's so funny that the run passes by his old military base there around mile 22 before the switchback, the new switchback at least for this course. You pass by the old reserve base, and I was a kid going there, watching my dad fly out to Korea for his training for reserves. So passing by that building is like, I was there like at 7, 8 years old. And then when they switched the course to Santa Monica, 11 years ago, I'm like, Dad, I'm running right past the building before we go over the hill. And we were running through there. You remember how I used to go through there first? You used to actually
Yeah,
run in
yeah.
there and underneath that little thing, but then they switched it the last couple of years. So that was a huge memory. And then number five, I think the fifth memory of just all these, 20th consecutive is just the city of LA, man. Like people dog on our city outside of LA, Californians and, LA mentality, gangster stuff and all this. And, Biggie Smalls was killed there. And, all these memories of just riots and things like that. And when you experience the LA Marathon, man, as you have, even the old school ones back in 02, 03, 04, you're going through the heart of the OG territory, and there's people handing out like Nalinators and oranges, and they still do that today. But there was nothing like going through the old school streets of LA and the first courses, and just I wasn't there in the beginning in 84, 85, but seeing that camaraderie with the city for those few hours is nothing like that, man. It's like people dog on us, but when you see LA in that aspect, it's a blessing in disguise, man.
Yeah, they make you feel like a professional athlete that day for those couple hours. The way they come out, cheer for you, show you support. And back in I've done a few of those with before they changed the routes, and we're talking some of the neighborhoods where at least back in the day you wouldn't want to go through.
Nope.
Now it's way different. Now everything's kind of getting more uh, gentrified in the ghetto areas, and anywhere where they are building the train, the subway station, they build houses, and the area just kind of gets nicer, which is all the areas that you didn't want to go to back then. And
Yes.
I want to touch on the Ironman because a marathon is 26.2 miles. For those listening that never done one before, because you always hear I want to run a 5K marathon with you. And I'm like, a 5K is 3.1 miles, so you're short, but I understand what you want to do. And a marathon, I'm sorry, an Ironman is I'm not quite sure of the actual swim. How many miles do you swim?
A 2.4 mile swim,
And then you bike what 120 something miles,
112 miles.
and then after that, in that order, you run a marathon to finish it
Yes.
off.
The last event is a 26.2. As you know, don't forget the point two, man.
The point two,
And point two is the hardest. And yes, the 26.2. So a total of 140.6.
and you have 12 hours to do that, complete it.
For an Ironman, actually, it's 18 hours total to complete it. From the last day, I haven't done them in a while, but yeah, it's 18 hours to get through all that fun time.
And well, like, what did it take for you to finish, or did the training pay off, or was it like at times where you had to gut check yourself, or mentally like hit the wall when you hit the wall? It's got to be different than marathoning. I've never done an Ironman, so I just imagine the fatigue's got to be really extreme at certain points where you just
Yeah,
want to
it
quit.
is. Yeah, go ahead.
No, where you just want to quit, basically. I'm assuming.
Yeah, there's some moments there, like anything, even being new to the marathons. But just one point before I go into that, the comment you made about running with the top athletes, and that's one thing to keep in mind if you ever want to do it. For the people listening to this, cast, I would say you can pay for an event and run with the top athletes, and you can't just pay and play with Kobe, rest in peace. You can't just pay and go out there with your favorite football team. In any professional sport, you just can't do it. You can go watch it, pay a high dollar and go watch it. But yeah, for the marathon, you can toe up with the top athletes, the top Kenyans, American runners in the world, and or qualify for some of these bigger events. But that's the blessing that you and I have experienced. We're able to go in there with the best athletes in the world that can run a marathon, Olympic athletes, and run with them right in the same path they're going across. You can't do that in an NFL field unless you're speaking to the field, you know. But no getting ideas for anybody. But yeah, so just a side note on that. But yeah, the Ironman race, definitely training again, doing a lot of 100-mile rides with the guys, Thomas, Steve included, doing those long bike rides, putting in the long runs. LA Fitness, thank you. Just swimming in those pools consistently, not doing a little open water here and there, but just a lot of laps, just consistent laps and go above and beyond. I think it's like 180 laps in the LA Fitness pool, and that's something that is definitely trying on the body. But yeah, on the course, it was tough. My biggest fear was the swim. Right, going back to what I said earlier, I don't have a swimming background, and when I got out of the water on that 2.4-mile swim, it felt like it was the easiest thing of the day. It was like the fear set in more, and the mindset is so important for any of these events, marathon, 5K, 10K, or whatever, Ironman, ultras. It's what happens between these ears. This mindset is huge, and that's what got me through. I remember coming out of the water and seeing my parents there, always a big support system, and my wife was my girlfriend at the time, and she was there and support, and I actually had the owners I was talking about earlier that sponsored me for that event, and I actually had the full a suit lined up with my company's logos on it. We had it designed, and they sponsored me to pay for that total event, and which is huge because Ironmans are not cheap. And I came out of the water, and my dad's like, "How you feeling, man?" I'm like, I feel great." And came out, went to the bike, and came to the bike, and I got to tell you that the 112 miles on the bike, there were some moments there where your legs are feeling it. My whole mindset was like, you know what? How the heck am I going to do a 26.2-mile run after all that? Because we do what they call a brick workout. You do those brick workouts, swim and bike or bike and swim. And then you try to do them all three together. I would use the aquatic center in Pasadena that you're familiar with and run around the Rose Bowl. And then I would go for the swim after or vice versa. And then lock the bike up and then ride the bike. And I mean, you can do as many as those of you want, but when it comes to the live event, how do you feel once you accomplished both of those big events, 2.4 miles, 112, and then put the marathon in? So, yeah, about 13 miles in of the marathon, I was feeling very, very winded. Probably a little bit, I would say maybe even faint, feeling like I was going to faint a little bit. And then thank God for the support. And, kudos to all those people that come out there for the volunteers and the support. As you know, it's amazing what they do, and we wouldn't get to those events without them. And we had some cookies on there and some Coke. And as much as that's not a no-no in most training sessions during the Ironman event, it's makes you feel like a transformer, man. So that helped out a lot. Has a little bit of soup, a little bit of hot broth, and yeah, I actually linked up with this kid. He was like 20 years old or 19 years old, and him and I just started just pacing together. Heard a little bit about his story. He heard a little bit about my story. Don't know this kid today, but I got to tell you, him and I pushed to the finish line the last 13 miles all the way to the end. And I stopped there and I thanked him and he thanked me. And then, of course, my family and friends were there at the end. And you kind of lose track, but I didn't want to get lost in that moment. I didn't want to lose what we had gained. I told him, "Hey, look, man, I'll never forget you, man." And he said the same thing. And to this day, I hope he still says the same thing about me. Uh, Little young kid, man, 20. I was like giving him praise for doing that at that age. And it's those stories that you link up with people, as I'm sure you have a lot of those stories too, Ray, is that the neighbor that you would never say hi to or whatever, you just have this camaraderie and that bond. So yeah, it was tough, but I got to the finish line and considered myself an Ironman, and I got my tattoo on my leg to prove.
And how long did it take you to complete that?
That was that one. I would have probably done it in 12, but I heard it was one of the harder Ironmans that year, the inaugural or the second one after the inaugural. I did it in 13 hours and 30 minutes, which is a very respectable time for that course. Because, like I said at the end, the race director was like, man, these were Kona like conditions. And for the listeners that don't know, Kona is like the Super Bowl of Ironman in Hawaii. And to have that kind of same kind of comment, windy and hot, I took it. It was funny that about a month later, I was training out in Pasadena, up in the trails. So not Pasadena, out in Monrovia in the trails, and my boss and I were training together. And I came across this guy, and he saw my hat, and it said Ironman finisher, Arizona 2008. He's like, "Hey, I did that race." And the really cool thing about it is, before I walked away, he stopped me and said, "Man, you know what? But I didn't finish it." And he looked kind of down on himself. I was like, "Hey, don't get down, man. You'll be back next year." And he's like, "Yeah, I kind of DNF'd at the end. It was just too hot." I'm like, he's like, "Man, you're lucky you finished. A lot of people DNF'd that day. They couldn't complete the race. Even some pro athletes stopped and said it was just too much." And I stopped there and I said, "You know what? I held a lot of respect for that guy, because there's a lot of athletes out there that will say they did something or they completed it, or I did that race, and the fact they were just basically, pacing. And I know a few people that actually did that, and but to say that, kudos to that guy for admitting the truth and saying, it was a tough day, and it was. So yeah, 13 hours and 30 minutes, and it was a great day because I got to the finish line, and a lot of people didn't that day, unfortunately.
What do you get when you cross the finish line? What does Iron Man give you?
Ironman gives you, they get, of course, you get your beautiful medal. That everybody, sometimes my boss would call us metal whores. He would say that and say, we're going just for the bling, man, because Rock and Roll Series kind of promoted that a lot. Get the extra bling, and I have a bunch of those double down medals from Arizona, and doing the double series and getting the bigger medals as you do more of the races. And I have those bling medals too. So I'm one of those guys. I love the medals. So the Ironman gives you the medal, and then of course you get your normal stuff. You get all the kudos and all the different food and recovery fuels to get that. And the next day they do a real big event for like the ceremonial stuff. They don't do it the same day because it's such a long, day. It just, you have up to 18 hours, so they can't host an event after that. It's the next morning. So they give a real nice ceremony, give a lot of kudos to, fastest athlete in each division, and gender, and age groups. And it's it's kind of a real nice thing. And just kudos to all the athletes for getting across the finish line. And that was when he was holding the microphone up and saying, "Hey, yesterday's event was like Kona like conditions. It was really hot and muggy, and it was very windy on the bike." And for those of us triathletes know, when you have a disc wheel on that bike, it's very hard to stay upright because you can get pushed over pretty fast.
And what kind of food do they have after? Is it the typical like bananas and bagels that you get at a marathon, or do they give you like? Because I've done trail races and they give you like better quality food. Is it more quality
Yeah,
or?
it's they give you all the standard stuff, but yeah, you got a lot of their items there. You got pizza. I mean, you got like a lot of heavier carb items because they know you're probably dying out there in the course. And like I said, a lot of different soups, and it's just things that are like more sugary, like cookies, and things that are a little bit more open, more like you'll find that at the Benelli series, even in Benelli Park for triathlons, you find a lot of different things, like even peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and things that are already pre-set up. Um, Love LA, but even finishing the line this time, I wish they would have chocolate milk at every LA. It'd be nice to have a real nice, good protein chocolate drink or some sort of option there. Not too critical on it, but in a perfect world, that's at least what I would like to have at the end of finish time. But you have all those things. You have chocolate milk, a lot of other items versus like just a marathon race.
And what do you do to maintain your energy for an Ironman? Same thing like goos that that you would use for a marathon, or different types of
Yeah,
energy.
goose is definitely a go-to. Salt tablets, different electrolyte drinks along the course that you
So
take.
no real food then. You're just kind of consuming goos and water and stuff like that.
There's food, definitely food. Like I told you, they have the on the run. They have like the soups. They have the cookies and the licorices, and the candies, and definitely bigger options and sodas. Doing the Ironman that I did, the half Ironman up north in Sonoma near the Russian River, that one as well. That was a tough race, hot, very hot. It's called the Vineman race, and that Vineman race was it's Ironman sanctioned as well. There's a lot of Ironman distance races, but they're not sanctioned by Ironman, so you don't get that official Ironman logo at the end. So I would do a lot of Ironman sanctioned races, even though they weren't always the full races. But that half Ironman in Sonoma, same thing. They had Coke on the course, and man, that sugar hit your system, and it just felt so good.
Wow. I can't swim and I don't have a bike, but one day Steven keeps telling me, get a bike. And that's pretty much how it starts. He keeps just telling you to do it and eventually you do it.
It does. It's so true, man. I had a fear of the water, but as we both know the mentality. I'll go back to that between the ears. I'm telling you, man, that was my mindset. I pushed that out within a month and said, look, if I really want to do this, I'm going to have to start out somewhere on the swim because I don't have any background in saying I'm a collegiate swimmer. Like a lot of the triathletes I've known do have that. Steve, as you know, he's a fish in the water. He loves scuba. He loves everything water. I'd never had it. Matter of fact, I had a fear of the water. It wasn't even anything to do with it. I was always in fear of like drowning. And, with the bike, you could stop, get off the bike. In a run, you can stop and stretch. Swimming, you can't do that. You can't do that or else you're going to go down. And they have a lot more things today with the wetsuits that are more buoyant. They have more life saving devices that you can use. Some are Ironman sanctioned, some are not. So if you need to pull that, it's like a little life floating device. But yeah, the swim is definitely has been a barrier to most people that I've talked to that were Ironman. That was probably the more consistent theme on why they didn't want to initially do it was a swim. And once I beat that challenge up and did all my training, it's like anything. The more you overtrain for it, when you comes to the actual event, that should be the time when you're having the better time. So
Yeah, I've never done one and I never really considered any of the obstacles, but talking to like Steven, he told me when you're swimming and you're crowded, people will come in and hit your hand as you're trying to get your strokes in. So I was like,
oh yeah.
people will panic, and then that's how sometimes people drown. So that was pretty interesting to me because you don't really think about that, or I didn't prior to him telling me that.
Oh yeah, it's 1,500 athletes that start out on most Ironmans, and I knew my swimming ability. So even though I was confident going into the race, I stayed in the middle end of the pack, and just watch your goggles and watch. You don't want to get kicked on the face too. I've seen people get bloody noses and get kicked in the mouth, and it just throws you all off. Or you get kicked in the glasses and you lose your goggles, and then you need those for like look. You can be in a world of hurt because especially if you just started out and you're like in the beginning of that 2.4 mile swim. So that would be a big thing. But I'll go back to my LA marathon races by having so many since '02 leading up to my Ironman race in '08. I had already ran some others outside of the state that portion of it using that marathon mindset, even though I had that 112-mile bike under my leg and in the swim, it really it really benefited me to be able to know that I could still push through it with that experience prior to doing Ironman. So that's a benefit for you, man.
And then I know that faith is big, big part of your life.
It is.
The first time I ran LA Marathon, we went together, but everybody went their own way. But
Yes.
we all prayed before. I remember that kind of like as a standout memory.
Thank you.
And we have one of your favorite Bible quotes going
Yep.
through here. So why don't you let us know why you like that one?
Well, it says it right there. I mean, it's going to that section right now. Run and not grow weary, and walk, and the Lord will be there for you. And it's Isaiah 30:41, and I actually had that tattooed on the back of my leg, along with Jesus on the cross and the Passion. And it just goes hand in hand with the marathon running, and in life, the challenges we go through. And Isaiah 30:41 talks about that, lifting you up with eagles and, soaring and, running and walking and not becoming weary. Like he's going to be your strength no matter what part of life or part of the run you're in. That's why I base that on my faith. Anything I've ever traveled to for running, I always take a couple of DVDs with me. Braveheart, You can't beat that with that speech he gives about we're going to fight them to the end and not give up. And I take Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie, because nothing like seeing Jesus go through the torment, whether you're a believer or not. That just kind of motivates me. Not kind of, it does motivate me to kind of keep pushing through when there's pain, to know the pain that he endured for us. So that's why I pray during every race, and been blessed. I talk about my wife, talk about my kids, talk about great moments, but without him, I wouldn't be able to do any of this, whether it's Ironman, day to day life, getting through those demons. That's been a huge thing. But that Bible quote, that's why as that Bible verse is why I tattooed that on my leg to remind me, and also others that have been in front of me and behind me, or vice versa, because as you know, it kind of you jog between people through these runs, and I've had many people over the years come to me and say, "Man, I've been following Jesus the whole way behind you, man," or "Hey, Isaiah 30:41, man, I know that scripture, man, got to keep going." And it says it right there as you're reading. You're not going to be faint, not going to be weary. He's going to lift you up like eagles, and no matter what you do, He's going to be there. And so that's been a motivation for me since the beginning of anything I do in my athletic life as well.
That's uh, I don't know. To me, you don't really hear about athletes too much, except at the very end, they're always like, "Thank you for winning the Super Bowl or championship." So it and for some of them, it may have to do with endorsements, but you've never been shy about that, and I know it's important to you, and I wanted to get more information on why that one's important to you. So thank you for sharing that. And I also wanted to ask you, have you ever crossed over to like ultra races, ultra any ultra?
Yeah, I have done a couple of those. One of them that stands out is the Bulldog Run, which was a trail run. I've done a lot of trail running. I mentioned my boss a few times here, Mike, 83 years old, amazing guy, still running today. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. He started at 60, 64, 63 years old. And so we can always start off in anything in our life whenever we're ready. Like I said, whatever's between the ears, we can make it happen. He did. And he's did a lot of trail running with me. And that's kind of how I segued into doing that ultra. That was a 30, I think a 31-mile race. So I guess they consider anything beyond 26.2 being the ultra runs. And I've done that one a couple times, and that was a great race. A very very tough race in August because the temperatures are usually close to the 100 mark, and there's really not a lot of coverage for shade. So, and it's got a lot of different variations and inclines and declines. So definitely taxing on the body. But yeah, I've done some ultra running there. I've also helped Thomas on a few of the runs. He's done the AC 100. I was able to pace him for the last, I think it was like 27 or 28 miles. And, just didn't get the medal or anything for it, but it was nice to be able to pace a buddy, kind of pay it forward for the things that he's helped me out with, and vice versa. So it was great to kind of do those races for the ultra stuff. And I still love the trails today. I mean, nothing like going on the trail run. I'm a avid outdoors type of guy, and I love going camping with my family. And that's the trail running is amazing. It's awesome to do trail running.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to reach out to Thomas and work on getting him on here. When you ran into Thomas, because that's a 100-mile race basically. That
Yes.
uh, he must have been probably like on mile 80 or something like that, roughly
Yeah, he
eighty-five.
was like 70. I think it was like 74, 73,
How,
and I had to
was he
check in
pretty
there.
beat up? Was he
Yeah, I check
hallucinating?
in around midnight. He was pretty beat up, man. Yeah, he was looking good, but he had a full staff there, a couple nurses that are friends of his, um, a couple of physical trainers. You may have known him. Noriel is one of the guys. He's definitely a great athlete, actually a Kona Ironman finisher, and they were all there in support, and I was there to pace them, and they have to weigh you in, and if you're a certain weight under, they could stop you, man. So it's very critical that you're hydrating and fueling properly, or else if they weigh you, they can actually tell you, you can't continue. So after all those miles, just to be told no, that would be insane. So yeah, he was actually. You can't really touch them. There's a lot of details that you can't mule for them. You can't mule their food. You can only pace them. and you're not supposed to touch them or push them or anything. They get real critical on that portion of it. And he was actually hallucinating a little bit. Um, he was thinking he was seeing bears on one portion of the race. He can tell you more about that on your show next time. But yeah, he was actually seeing some bears and hearing some noises and stopping me. I'm like, Thomas, just keep moving forward, man. I got you. And it was kind of a little edgy because it was dark and we had headlamps on, and a couple of those single track trails, they drop off pretty far. So thank God we did our training there, knowing what we were going to go through, and I was able to kind of pace him through that. And it was funny towards the end, like mile 26, like of a marathon. I was more taxed than he was, and he was finishing 100 miles. So kudos to him again. One thing about Thomas, he's always been good, a good strong finisher, for any of his races.
Yeah, that would be like the worst case scenario, running into a bear at mile 80. You're just tired. It's not like you have a chance at mile 1, but still mile 80, you're just dead.
Yeah,
Uh,
it would be, man. But yeah, Thomas and Steve, and speaking of praying, just the last little note on that is they always turn to me and ask me about make sure we say our prayers. So even when we left the LA Marathon this just a week ago, right away we prayed. And as you know, we lost a good friend, Brandon. Uh, you know, uh, and it was tough to lose him, and especially for Steve, knowing him since he was like I don't know 5 years old or however old those guys were in St. Francis. I think you even knew him then too, right?
yep.
And so losing him was very tough. Knowing all the good times we had, and we used to joke around and say, "Who liked Tupac?" And we used to do all these like Wu Tang and make all these funny comments because Brandon was a clown with us, and we were always clowning around together. And we were paying him honor throughout the whole race, kind of making those statements in honor of Brandon. So we prayed before the race, prayed for Brandon, knowing that he was running with us. And knowing that Brandon actually ran a marathon with Mateo years ago, they finished that one together. And Steve and I were even saying we're going to start wrestling on the course like Brandon and Mateo were doing on the course of their LA marathon journey. But uh, praying ahead of time to give it up to something bigger than us, whether you believe in Jesus Christ or just a God, um, something above and beyond us. We wouldn't be doing that without this and without that source. So, yeah, it was prayers are huge for me, and knowing the guys turn to me, that's a huge thing to me to know that that's ahead of anything else. They say, "Hey, go to Sean, man. He's gonna say the prayer now." And that means the world to me, man. If I can leave this life and someone recognizes me for marathons and Ironman, that's awesome. But if they say, "Hey, that's the guy I like to pray," that's important. That's the most important.
Yeah, I missed it this year, but it was great seeing just Thomas and Steven and you and Hung uh,
Yeah.
during the LA Marathon this year. And I Steven mentioned to me that you guys were going to run it all together in honor of Brandon,
Yep.
which a good friend of mine too. Grew up together. I've known him for years, and
Yep.
I this year when it got difficult, I thought about him and what he went through. Also, my cousin who wanted to be there this year, who runs it pretty much almost every year. He's in his 60s. He basically got cancer and he passed away on Tuesday.
Yeah. Sorry to hear that.
So
Rest in peace.
yeah, I thought about him during the hard miles, and the next one I will run dedicated to him.
That's
So
that's that's a great way to do it, man. I think getting into this whole marathon this year, knowing it was the 20th, uh, even though it was about my personal accomplishments, running together with the three individuals you mentioned, Hung, Steve, Thomas, and then even seeing you there on mile one was awesome. But knowing we had that commitment together, we all said like 4 or 5 months before the marathon was that we're doing this in honor of Brandon, and because he had passed in May, I believe it was May, and doing that. Actually, it was no, it was just a year. It was a year, right? Just past a year ago, right? Year in November.
just like a year,
Yeah,
yeah.
year. So we in May we started to say we're going to do that. So I mixed that up. But in May, 'cause it's just been a year, we're going to do it in honor of him and honor of the great guy he was, family man he was, and just always the guy that got you laughing and always funny as hell, man. Uh, so yeah, that was definitely great. And then for your cousin to do that in honor of him, and again, doing that for him next year. That's great. And I think about those trying times, when it gets tough. I think about Jesus. I talked about Braveheart. But personally, I think about my grandfather in Vietnam, sorry, Vietnam, in World War II, and the things he went through, and that he had suffered through. And it pushes you through. So whatever it takes to get to that finish line, whether it's, God, or someone passing in your life, anything that can motivate you to get through those pain barriers, I recommend it.
Yeah, and sometimes you may find that it's like a good release, a good you just feel better after you're done. It's like wow, and
Yeah.
you may not be able to use it the next time because it's not the same type of emotion anymore. I know I've done it a few times with. Maybe that's why I've ran 55 marathons so far.
Yeah, exactly, man. I know. Like I told you, seeing your progress when you were posting, as much as I had kind of done a chunk of different things, seeing you do that was very inspirational to see your updates and what you were doing. And I think everybody's accomplishments, whether it's something like Thomas has done from Badwater to the accomplishments you've done, having 50 plus, or the stuff I've done, a combination of both worlds of triathlon. Even for Hung, who's done a few of these, and even my good friend Yvette. I mean, she was out there supporting me. She's done 3 marathons, and you know, people see individuals and say, "Oh, that person could do a marathon." I hear a lot of friends say, "Oh, you got the body style to do that." It's not always about that. Like I go back to my ears. It's between the 2 ears. It's between your mentality, and that's what it takes. And all the things that you have done have been motivating, and others around us, and it's just a good energy to keep us, like I said, putting one foot in front of the other, all the way to the line, baby.
Yeah, I get told a lot of, oh, you've done a 55. You don't have to train. It's not hard for you anymore. I'm like,
Yeah, right.
what are you talking about? Uh,
Yes. You have to keep it going. I tell everybody that same thing. They say, yeah, you could get a little complacent, but that's when the marathon kicks your butt, is when you get a little complacent, don't put in the time. You always got to put the time and training in. And you got to do what works for you. I've had a lot of coaching over the years, myself doing my own coaching and things like that, but not involved like yourself, like that level of coaching. But, I always tell the athletes I talk to, or give some training to, that look, this one thing may work for you. Use it, and what feels comfortable, stay with that flow. You don't want to go too far left or too far right, but find that middle ground, and you'll usually find success. And yeah, you got to respect the distance. I don't care if you're even doing a 5K. I've ran some pretty fast 5Ks. I've ran some sub 18 5Ks in my day, and and those were tough, and hitting those like five something pace, doing that. It was one at the Staples Center I did. I even got a hockey puck that came with a LA Kings 5K, and I got like one of the top finishers with the thing, and it was a little hockey puck I got. And those guys are out there thinking like, well, you don't have to train for that. I'm like, are you kidding me? If you want that quick, fast turnover, you better be out there and doing some quick intervals and things like that, or else you're gonna be dying. It's hard. It's hard miles, whether it's 3 miles or 26. You got to respect any distance.
that is so true. And we have Chris, who is actually a creator here on Fireside as well. And looks like he has a question. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, this is Chris Rossetti in San Francisco. Thank you for letting me in. This is a great conversation and very inspiring. I'm extremely overweight and have limited mobility, but this is getting me in the mood to, never give up, keep moving, keep putting one foot forward, and so forth. So thank you for this inspirational stuff. My question is this, and I'll go back to the audience and enjoy the free shrimp cocktail. My question is, do you folks run with music? Do you have headphones with music? And if so, what do you guys like to listen to?
You want to go first, Ray?
Thank you for that, Chris. And I took pride in getting the shrimp cocktails myself. They weren't cheap, but nothing's too cheap for my audience. So thank you for everybody being here. Me personally, I do run with music, but it'll be different. If I run in the trails, no music at all. I want to connect with nature. I want to hear the wind blowing, the birds chirping. If there's water, even better. Uh, if I run like in the marathon, depending LA marathon, there's so many people cheering you all along the way in music. You really don't have to, but if I do it, it's at the end when I'm already like just need a little extra burst. In the street, you got to be really careful because people just don't care about pedestrians at all. If you can find a nice bike trail where you don't have to worry about too many cars, then I would say it's okay. But it's just really more about being careful with that. Sean, what about you?
Good points, Ray. I have to agree with you on there with some of those points. And yeah, there's a couple of areas that I have mapped out around my home where I know it's safe to run with the headphones. And I love music. There's actually studies out there in Runner's World magazine. And if you go to runnersworld.com, you can find things on there about beats per minute. And that actually helps you push, a little quicker turnover. But whatever inspires you, I've heard people listen to Diana Ross, and that helps them. And nothing against her, I love her, but I wouldn't listen to that. So I love heavy metal. I'll listen to that. I'm a hip hop guy, tried and true. But yes, listen to music, whatever gets you going. I highly recommend it. During the LA Marathon, this speaking of the running with the buddies, I we opted to not wear anything because we wanted to experience it together and just have that camaraderie. But yeah, I would say about 70% of the events I've done, I've ran with music, and just gotta find the right ones that don't get in your way. Wireless are great, but again, if you don't have a good connectivity, that can be sour. So find the right thing that connects well. You may want to go old school with the plug, just so you have that connectivity. There's nothing like running a race and it's not connecting, and you got to carry those things across the entire journey, and I have no music playing in them, and it's a nightmare. And then I lost a pair of Bose sound deadening uh, headsets 2 marathons ago, which are very expensive because at the end you're so tired and not paying attention. I wrapped them up, put them in my hat, walked away, and didn't realize, and they were gone. They magically grew and disappeared. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind. I currently have Beats by Dre now. They work really well. They're wireless. I ran them in last year's marathon, not this marathon, and they worked all the way to the end. They were great. And the great thing about Beats by Dre is they're not sound editing. So I recommend the non sound editing for running because you can still hear beyond that. You can still hear things coming through from people's voices, animals, or whatever. So, yeah, but definitely to answer your question, I love running with music and I recommend it. But be careful.
And yeah, actually, I didn't answer what type of music. Type of music, I listened to a little bit of everything. I was looking for their business card. I actually met them at the LA Marathon Expo, and I want to do a show about that, about running with a 170 beats per minute. They say you
Yep.
run faster, but there's different types of 170 beats per minute music. There's slow pace and even fast pace. So these guys came up with an app, and it was free, and it adjusts, and it was all for running. And when I run, I'm very minimal. I like to run with this because it's very tiny, and I
Yep.
know it's gonna last for hours. But the only bad thing about this is you there's no like Bluetooth option for it. Maybe there's a splitter now, but that's usually what I use. And then music, I listen to everything from like hip hop to metal to Spanish music to I listen to a lot of and make a lot of like YouTube clips where the like Les Brown and Eric Thomas speaking and Ray Lewis, and it's uh I hardly ever do books when I'm running. A lot of people do that, but I've never done books. It's just and I like mixes, a good mix of like DJ style club music as well. It kind of keeps me going, but then I also like some Frank Sinatra because sometimes
Mhm.
you need to kind of like pace at a slow pace, and you don't want to get too crazy. You want to save that music for the end because
Like,
then
well,
you're
metal's
gonna
going. I'm going at 14-minute pace right now. What's going on?
yeah. I'm like, damn, I just beat the police brigade or right there or motorcycle. So yeah, a little bit of everything, and just thank you so much for being here. Before we finish off, I just want to know what do you have for next year planned? What LA Marathon
Yeah,
again?
and yeah, LA Marathon have that lined up for sure. March, going back to the standard, month it's in, and because of that, kind of getting inspired to Boston qualify again. Not there just yet. It takes a lot of pace and dedication, and I may consider doing the Ojai Mountains, the beach run again. That's where I qualified twice for Boston at 3:08, both times actually, I think within a few seconds of each other, and would love to just do that one again. Maybe even take on some more hats for my wife this year. She's talked about doing a couple 10Ks. So would love to push my girls. Keep them seeing what dad's doing, what dad loves. So yeah, I think this year's going to present a couple more of those like 5K turkey trots and mustache dash runs and those type of things. So yeah, from that standpoint, definitely the LA Marathon has kind of pushed that inspiration back up like it always does every year.
That's good because there's different types of like goals. You could just want to continue the streak, or I like me personally. I like to keep always pushing it. So I like the fact that you still want to. Do you want to try and PR when you?
Yes. Yes, I want to. I don't want a PR for LA. I want to do a sub 4 in LA this year. I want to get back into that sub 4 range, whether it's 3:59 or 3:30. That would be great. I don't expect a 3:30, but I would love the sub 4. This next year's race. This year's race was about camaraderie and going with the friends all the way to the finish line. But Thomas, being the faster runner, I want to link up with him again, do some more serious training, get back into that sub 4 mentality. And like I said, whether it's just breaking it by 3:59, I'm all for it. That's fine. And then see how that feels, and then go from there. But I've always had an inspiration to get back to qualifying for Boston because both times I qualified, they had the bombing and they had the 100-year anniversary. So they pushed me back both times, so I was unable to run it. I don't like to make excuses. I am all for those people that were able to go back and do the race, but definitely have an inspiration to qualify and participate. Because I've been to the finish line. I've been to Massachusetts a few times with my wife, and was able to go right to that finish line in front of the library. They keep it painted there every year. It stays there until they refresh the paint. So I have inspiration as an avid runner, as one of the top running events in the world being Boston. To cross that finish line one of these days, and they don't keep lowering the pace, so it's going to still be around that sub 3:10 pace. So it's going to have to be that. Maybe in 5 years I'll get the extra 5 minutes. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, with that bombing came more people wanting to do the
Yes,
event, so it
yes.
made it more
Unfortunately,
competitive.
yep.
hmm But I know you can do it, and I look forward to you
Yes,
doing it.
thank
And,
you.
and and then you could either come before you go to Boston
Hey,
or
there you
after, and let
go.
us know your experience on what it took to qualify for Boston.
Will do,
So
Ray. I'll be back for sure, man.
thank you so much for being on here, Sean. I enjoyed it, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you before LA Marathon again. And thank you so much for coming on, everyone listening in here and around. Until next week, this has been Coach Ray Z with Athletic Definition.
My pleasure. Take care, guys.